everybody. Welcome back for this episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and the say what. Speaking of saying what, it's gonna be a little different today. I was coerced into being the one who is being interviewed today. So before I ramble on about everything that I don't want to do and everything of why this is probably not the best idea, I'm going to turn it over to Angela and Carrie. Ladies, take it away.
Well, Nicole, thank you for letting us take over and flip the script, so to speak. And we're very excited for tonight. We started having a conversation, Nicole and I, about no and boundaries and things like that. And I said, have you ever talked about that? You should do this on a podcast. And so she graciously agreed to have us interview her. So Carrie Hart and I have some great questions to ask her.
Hey everyone, I'm Carrie Hart. I'm the manager of volunteer services here at Bay Health in Delaware. And I am I'd like to say, recovering boundary issue person. So I can't wait to see what Nicole gives me for my toolkit to say no to all the crazy suggestions that I get in my volunteer world at a hospital. So no pressure there, Nicole.
Well, listen, how do you think the podcast got started? I was like, woo! Yeah, that's a little bit of that. So, all right, I'm ready.
All right. So I've heard a quote, and I just want to see what you think about if you say yes, then you're saying no to something else. So how do you sort out your yeses and nos and figure that out?
Well, I think it's really important for you to know what you want. And in regards to whatever it is, if it's with your volunteer program, if it's in your life, like whatever it is, you need to know what you want. I've heard people say, if you don't stand up for something, you fall for anything, right? Like if you don't have some absolutes in your life, you're just going to end up doing everything, and then it's going to be willy-nilly, and you're going to be like doing a little bit of everything, and nothing's going to be fulfilling or done all the way 100%. So the first thing is know what it is that you want. And then if anything that comes along, any request that comes along, if it does not enhance or align with whatever it is that you want, then you just say no, because you were exactly right. If you say yes to that, then you could be unintentionally saying no to something that could come along right after that, which is what you really wanted to do, but you took away the time and space and opportunity for that and gave it to something else that was not aligned with what you needed.
So how do you figure out what you want?
Oh Lord, I knew I was going there. So let's narrow it down, right? Because it could be for so many different things. It could, can we narrow it down a little? Like,
yeah, so the whole world. No. So if you look at just we'll talk about the volunteer, if you're a volunteer manager, right? Engagement leader, whatever your role is, we'll just narrow it down because that's all the three of us are, our jobs is to go that direction. So in that role, how do you do the yeses and nos and figure out what you want?
I start with the mission of the organization, and it all comes back down to the mission of the organization. Is this ask going to forward the mission? Does it support the mission? Does it enable the mission? If it does not, then it's a no. So that means for us and the organization that we're in, for instance, if a volunteer comes up to me and is like, what'd be really, really great? We should start a blood donation center on one of our facilities. And I'm like, that nowhere lines up with the mission. It's a really great idea, but that doesn't line up with what we're doing and where we're going. But I do know of a great organization, and the volunteer manager over there is Angela. She would be more than happy to help because you align with what her organization is doing. I'm not setting up no blood bank at my org. Like that's not, no. And I know it's an extreme, but it's like, it's so great to have that as a compass and a guide to like, if it does not line up with this, then the answer is no.
That's great. Carrie, do you want to ask something?
So my first question, I kind of stole from the title of your podcast.
Oh, geez.
No pressure, yeah. So what is some feedback that you've received where you're like, that crossed a boundary for me, or that is something that I've got to push back on? And how did you do that?
So, I was recently told that I do not listen well. And I said, I have to tell you that I hear what you're saying. And the fact that you feel as though I don't listen well concerns me, because that means I'm missing the mark with you. I've been told a lot of things in my life. I've been given a lot of feedback, but the fact that I don't listen well has never been one of them. So the fact that that's something that you have said means that I'm missing the mark with you somehow, and I need to learn how to communicate with you better.
That was good.
So yeah.
See, Angela and I were talking earlier about how when we get feedback or someone gives us criticism or says something that crosses a boundary, we don't think about the right thing to say until like 10 minutes later or at 2 a.m. So I like that. Good job.
So a lot of that, though, again, it's rooted in like, I know who I am in that particular. And because for me personally, that is something that I am very passionate about, is making sure that I listen to understand and come up with solutions from that. So I know that for me, that's something that I work on like literally on a daily basis. And I've had a lot of success in it. So for that to come, it was just like, that one bounced off. I'm like, okay, well, maybe this isn't a general overall thing, but it's still valid. If she feels as though I don't listen, then okay, then I'm missing something with her and I haven't been able to fine tune it. But I have many, many, many other instances that would say otherwise. And yeah, I am for lack of because I hate the word victim, but I'm a victim of, dang it, I wish I would have said that. Or you wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, dang it, I could have said this, or dang it, I could have said that. And what I try to do is take those as learning opportunities for the next time. I'm like, okay, next time I'm going to be ready. Right. Especially it just comes back to knowing 100% who you are. That to me is 90% of the battle. If you don't know who you are, let's back all the way up and take care of that, because that is also how you can manage feedback that is coming in. I don't know if I've ever received feedback that's crossing the line. I've received feedback that was mean. I mean, and you're just like, well, Lord have mercy. Goodness gracious. And let me tell you, a lot of my first instances with getting feedback from volunteers was from older people. The organization that I worked with before, they were older. They were like either newly retired, getting ready to retire, have been retired for a while. And like my first 2 years in volunteer engagement, which is why I started this podcast, I was like, grandmas are mean.
No
Oh
filter.
my gosh, they are so mean. And it was like,
They can be.
you're supposed to be cute and giving me hugs. You're a grandmother. I was like, oh, the tongue lashings that I
It's
would
all a
get
lie.
from people who didn't get their way. I was like, but you're a grandma. Like, woo. So that was one of the first lessons that I had to learn, was like, I have to make sure I operate and respond out of who I know, who I am, my values, my character, things that I have worked on all of my life, that to know that and again, and speaking of boundaries, right? What I found is the reason why I was getting those tongue lashings is that the only people who have issues with you putting up boundaries are those who no longer benefit from you not having them. So when I put my boundaries up, it was like, and I was like, well, because typically if you put up a boundary, people who respect it are like, cool, well, what can we do? What can we? But it's those who are just used to getting what they want, or they're used to getting from you what they wanted, or from the program what they wanted. Because the best is when, somebody leaves the program and the new person comes in, and it's always, well, this is how we always did it. That doesn't make it right.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
That's a gem. That's a gem. Write that one down, folks. That's a gem.
It was a bit of a mic drop there. That was a good one.
I think we're done. No, we have more questions. We have more questions. Don't leave. So in thinking about who you are, I know that you, if you want to talk about it, you've moved locations, you've changed jobs recently, you've gone through a lot of iterations of yourself. So how have you over time discovered who you are, formed who you are, gotten to where you are now? What does that look like? Or has it just been sort of an organic process? Who's helped you? How have you helped?
I live a faith-oriented life, and my faith has provided a lot of guidelines and character and values for me, that it doesn't matter where I move, where I go, those things never change. So that keeps me centered, and that helps me to be able to handle a lot of the craziness that will come at me. But everything is also a growth opportunity. I am also not the first person, if somebody comes and says and gives me feedback that I may not necessarily like, I'm not the first person to just like throw it away. I'm like, okay, well, is there truth in this? Because I often will say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like, yes, maybe the volunteer was upset when they said it. Maybe they didn't say it in the nice way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there may not be some truth in it. Let me examine that and see if maybe there's some truth in that. And so being open to not always being right, being open to people seeing a part of me and identifying my weaknesses and identifying my blind spots, being open to looking at that and assessing it and being like, okay, maybe this is something where I need to change, or I can adjust this, and I can adjust this, and I can tweak that. That can go, but this, and this, and being malleable and being able to grow and change. Because if you stay stagnant, you're gonna break, right? You have to be able to bend like a tree in a storm, right? And the thing is, what happens when a tree is in a storm? It's its roots is what keeps it, but it's also what allows it to bend and be flexible and adjust to where it needs to be to come back. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Love that.
So based on everything that we've been talking about, and you've talked about your faith and kind of your North Compass, if you will, what's your mantra that gets you through the tough days, the tough minutes, those mean grannies?
Life isn't fair. Cool. Now, what are you going to do with what you have? Yes, there's somebody out there doing what I'm doing who's probably getting paid more, who is advancing more, who has more, who has a bigger budget, who has all of these things going for them. But if I sit and dwell on what I don't have, I miss out on the opportunities to create magic with what I do have. So in every situation, that is what I focus on. What can I make out of what I have in front of me, and not dwell on what I don't have? Because all that's going to do is just make you depressed, right? It's just like, oh, I don't have this and I don't have, like, okay, cool. But you know what though? Another perspective is I have something that somebody else doesn't have. Everybody has something that somebody else doesn't have, and everybody doesn't have something that somebody else does. So somebody out there is wishing that they had what I had, right? But that's not going to help them. Wishing isn't going to help them. Like, no, what do you have, and how do you have, like, the network and all the things that you have to be able to use that to your advantage, and then do it. And so that is my mantra. And it's like in my book, it's literally the first line in my book: life is not fair. And I tell people that because I'm like, cool, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's acknowledge that. Now let's move on. Because if you get stuck on life is not fair, you literally, you get stuck and you miss out on all the opportunities and the things that could be afforded to you because you got stuck there, as opposed to looking at it as, hey, everybody is dealt a different set of cards. What are you doing with yours?
So in the trendy terminology of right now, you've got some good gratitude going on. Like, you know, it's easy for everyone to say, I want that, I need this, I need more, more, more. And taking that step away from everything and saying, I'm grateful for what I have. It's not about the next finish line. You know, that really makes a difference. That's awesome.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot that I did not have. And there was a lot of things that happened to me in my life that are just not fair. Not fair.
Let's see. How do you manage your time, Nicole? So I know you're very busy. You have a full-time job. You're doing your podcast, a family, you know, other things in your life. So how do you balance the posting online and creating these podcasts and your job and your family and just going out and doing what recharges you?
This is a really good question. I'm very intentional about scheduling my time. And I am a huge believer that you make time for what's important, right? And I know you said I'm busy, but listen, everybody's busy. So that doesn't make me special, right? Everybody's busy. Everybody's got things going on. I mean, at this time in my life, I don't have young children or a young child, but at one point I did, and I was still doing the same thing because, again, I was like, where do I want to be in life, and what do I need to do to get there? And I'm going to carve out that time to make it happen. So if that means I have to get up a little bit earlier or stay up a little bit later in order to get it done, I'm going to get it done. But I'm also very intentional about when I'm not working, I'm not working. Like, it's really funny because sometimes over the weekend, I do not look at my stuff, like, for as far as my 9 to 5. I don't look at it. I come back on Monday and I almost have to, like, I had to read through notes from Friday because I have checked out so much. I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to? I'm not thinking about it over the weekend. But because that's a thing that I need to disconnect and make sure that I am, because if I'm plugged in, listen, what do they always tell you about your cell phone, right? Don't leave it plugged in, right? Because then what happens? It starts to diminish how much battery they tell you to unplug it and let it kind of go down and then plug it back in so it can charge back up. But if you stay there, you burn out, literally. So Yeah, I use a lot of calendars, and I put everything in my phone. I do a lot of reminders, including do not schedule. Like, I am not available during these times. So on my, especially like on my work calendar, especially on my work calendar, and because sometimes we have evening things and things like that. Well, I'm like, I miss dance. I haven't danced in a really, really, really long time. So I went through and I found a schedule of when dance classes are, and I blocked out on my calendar Thursday evenings. I am not available for volunteer meetings, for anything. If it is not dance, it's not happening. So those are a few of the things that I do, but I'm a big believer in, if there's something that you want to do, you will create and find the time. Another thing that I used to do too, is I would take note of how much time I was like watching TV or spending on social media. Because one day it occurred to me after I binge watched, it doesn't matter, but I was like, especially like when I found out like Friends, right? Back in the day, for us older people, I can't believe that's even a thing now, but whatever. Oh yeah, but I remember you referenced it. Y'all referenced it in your Alive thing, I think. But anyway.
Pivot.
We have Chandler Bing jobs. No one knows what we're doing here.
Yes. And understanding that they get paid, okay, let's just say, and this isn't for everybody, but this is just the example I'm using. They were getting paid $1 million per episode, right? Okay. So if I sat and binge watched, I'm not even going to go their whole season because the number would be ludicrous and we would all cry. So let's just say it's a regular like Netflix, the mini series, like 6 series, and those people were getting paid. That's $1 million for I just contributed to them making $6 million. What did I do for myself? And why do I not invest in myself even a little bit of that, right? Am I not worth even a little bit? So maybe instead of binge watching 6 hours, maybe I binge watch 3 and then pick up a book and read 3. Or, even if is it a finance book? Is it write a blog to encourage somebody else? Or like, how am I investing back in myself? Because we all get 24 hours, and I look at time as currency, right? So how are you spending your currency? If you think of it like if 24 hours is equal to $24, what are you going to do with that, right? So 8 of it, you're supposed to be sleeping. So you have $16 or 16 hours. How are you choosing to spend that? It's a commodity. What are we doing? Would you just take $8 and throw it out the window?
Right. Absolutely.
For no good reason, right? Like, that's how I think of time. I think of it as currency, and how am I writing my checkbook of time during the day? What am I doing with it? So yeah.
And
that's good.
Just to interject a little bit, to anybody out there who's like, I can't do that, I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. For the new year, I put a timer widget on my home screen of my phone. So it shows me every time I open it up, how much time I have spent on that phone that day. And let me tell you, there are days it is horrifying. And I'm like, I just wasted 2 hours of my life I am not getting back today. I need to refocus and have like a little checklist, daily checklist, like drink water in the morning and blah, blah, blah on that same page to kind of keep me on track. Because yeah, it's so easy to be like, oh, we've got kids, we've got jobs, we've got everything else. Like, we just don't have time to work out, or we don't have time to do whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, you do. You just need to get off TikTok or Instagram or whatever your drug is, and yeah, make it
And
happen.
listen, and I'm not saying not to ever do it, but we have to like be
You gotta
intentional. I
have
am
a
going,
boundary.
yeah, right. Like I'm going to spend 1 hour on social media then, and when it's done, be done and move on to, or if it's whatever, however it is. But like you said, to your point, you should never look down and be like, oh my gosh, I was on there for that long.
You can set a timer. I have
I do have that.
on my phone, I've done that. So you can set timers that will it'll shut you off automatically. And it says, there's 5 minutes left. You know, do you want me to add more? Because if you were in the middle of something, like maybe you want to finish, but then you know, okay, 5 minutes, I'm done. And so you just then it's been great. It's been a very good resource for me. And even the bedtime settings where it goes dim at a certain time and, you know, whatever it is, like all of those things happen. And that's been really helpful for me. In fact, I did a training for volunteers just recently, and that was one of the things I addressed was the addiction of phones and how they are made to be addictive. And so setting timers and not having it in the bedroom for sleepy time and all of those things, like just it's crazy. And there's lots of tips out there. But
Yeah.
anyway, I love what you're saying about that, Nicole.
Yeah. So I am a huge believer, and you make time for what is important to you. And so like people will say, oh, Nicole, well, how do you get it done? And I'm like, well, and they will say, oh, I'm so busy, or I'm this, or I'm that. And I'm like, oh, well, why don't you try this? Or why don't you try that? And they keep coming up with excuses. And I'm like, listen, just tell me you don't want to do it. I will have so much more respect for you if you just say, well, honestly, at this time, it's really not that important. I would rather do this. I can respect that. I can't respect you saying, oh, but I don't have time. Especially if I've just given you 3 suggestions of things that you can do, and you shoot everything down. You don't really want it. And that's okay, but just be honest with yourself. Because I already know. Just be honest with yourself, be honest with me, and let's just be real. If you tell me you want to binge watch 6 hours, cool. But then don't tell me that you don't have enough time to, oh, I want to write this book and da da da. Well, you don't really want to. You have a desire, but you don't really want to, because if you really wanted to, you would reallocate your time.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
You have to hear that sometimes, and it takes someone probably saying that a couple times for maybe someone to accept it. So good job setting that other boundary.
Side note, countdowns give me anxiety. So I would never, ever set a countdown. It's like 5 minutes left, 10 minutes left. And you know how we do like webinars and things like that, and the countdown, and it'd be like, oh, we're going live. Oh, like I am just tell me when to go. And then, but the anxiety of 5 more minutes, 4 more minutes, 3 more, I can't. I'm like, just tell me when I need to be on and I'm good. The countdown stresses me out more than the actual whatever it is I'm doing. Just an FYI, just I'd let you know.
There you go. Well, good. We'll just never try to do a countdown for you then.
Ever. If you need it,
Okay.
I always because I'll be on back rooms, and I'll be like, and I will cover it, and I'll just tell the host, just tell me when I need to go. I'd rather. Okay, anyway, sorry.
So we're team countdown and your team fly. Just jump and fly and go.
Exactly.
Love it.
That's great. That is great. Let's see, Carrie, what else do you have?
I'm kind of stealing this one from the Real Simple I just got today about like 1-minute mantras, but they say, when you're taking a big leap into the life you desire, you're allowed to be scared. Courage is about being afraid and choosing to leap anyway, nerves and all. So when is a moment that you were scared that you had to take a leap and you were like, okay, we're just doing it?
During the pandemic. There were circumstances that it was like, I felt my only decision was either I needed to leap or I was going to get fired. And I was like, okay, here we go. It doesn't matter. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be fine. Taking that leap landed me in my new amazing job that I have. So I am all good about that. Another one of those was auditioning to be a professional cheerleader, like in my 30s, late 30s, late 30s, early 40s, walking into an audition room where people in the room are literally half your age.
And you had a kid by then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Fun times. But
Are you glad you did it?
I'm so glad I did it. So glad I did it. One of my favorite lines from a song that I just love, it's by Crystal Lewis. And she says, sometimes the thrill of soaring has to begin with the fear of flying.
It's good.
That's truth bombs tonight. Oh.
Multitude of gems going on here. Multitude.
And I hang on to
that one.
Yeah, I hang on to that often. Sometimes the thrill of soaring has to begin with the fear of flying. Or the fear of falling. Let me Google it. One of the two. Whatever, the fear of something though.
I don't think it matters what it is. It's fear. It's fear of something. And then you can soar. We got it. It's good. Doesn't matter what it is. Right?
We'll put it in the show notes. We'll put it in the show notes what it really was. And the title of the song is called For Such a Time as This. And it's beautiful. Like, for such a time as this, what could, like, something like, what would I miss? Do I want to stay where it's comfortable, or am I willing to take that chance? And then she's like, sometimes the thrill of soaring has to begin with the fear of whatever. I'll put it in the show notes.
Well, follow-up question to that then. What's your hype song when you're nervous and you're getting ready for a presentation or to do something that scares you? What is that song that you're in the car listening to, or what is your process before going on and speaking that gets you in the mindset to think, I've got this, I'm awesome, I'm gonna go do it?
Yo, hype songs, like, that's a podcast in itself, like, because you have just hit
I can't wait to hear it.
Like, I mean, no, there's so many, like, I'd have to think about and decipher. But in terms of how do I get myself ready before going, number one is, I know the amount of preparation that I put into before that button goes live. So I'm relying on that, right? I have put in hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And anybody who sat through any of my presentation, that 1 hour that you saw took months to prepare. And I practiced it over and over, and I run it by other people. And I add and I tweak and I make sure so that by the time I get there, number one, I know I'm prepared. And I do that because I am because time is such a commodity, I want to make sure that I'm not wasting anybody's. So I do everything that I can to make sure. So I know that when I'm going live, I can say that I have done everything that I possibly can, and have left everything on the floor. And here we go. And I'm going to give 100%. And even if I feel like for whatever reason, I don't need to be in that room, somebody saw something in me and thought enough that I should be, so I better bring it. Do not let me validate what I'm thinking. I'm going to validate what they were thinking, and live up to that. And so I get super nervous before all of them because I want to do such a good job. And again, my greatest, for the lack of better words, fear is that somebody comes out of one of my presentations and they have the feeling like some movies that you went to, well, that was 2 hours I'm not getting back. Like, I can't believe I paid for that. Like, I treasure people's time too much I don't want that ever to happen. So that's why I get nervous, is because I am, for the lack of better words, people are investing their time currency in me, and I want to make sure it is a good return on their investment. So that's how I get myself ready. It's like, well, look, I prepared for 3 months for this. I know I'm ready. I'm going to bring it. And I have my notes just in case. So yeah, but hype songs, yo, gosh. I have to think about that. I'm gonna have to put that like in podcast notes, because there's just so many. So I can't even think of one at this point, because I'm like, oh, what, maybe this one or that one or this one. And the thing is, I'm not good with song titles. I can tell you how it goes, but I can't tell you who sings it or what the name of it is. But I could be like, yeah, I would lose that competition. But I'll be
Yeah, you got to think about it. Let us know. Angela, what about you?
Maybe I'm a survivor.
You do have a little Beyonce feel to you.
Yeah, I think
with that hair, you could do the little
right, and make sure it doesn't get caught in the fan. Yeah, definitely
And you're a dancer.
That's a good one. I'm a survivor. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's great. So, Nicole, do you find yourself multitasking? Are you doing one thing like dishes or laundry or whatever and listening to a podcast like this or something like that? Is that another like time helper? What are other things that you do in that regard?
It's 1000%, right? And I know people are like, oh, it's not good to multitask. Well, listen, when I'm running, I listen to the podcasts that I want to listen to. I also listen to, I am a hardback book reader. I love the touch and the feel and the paper, but sometimes I want to get through a book faster than I have time to sit down and read. So I'll get the audiobook and I'll listen to it while I'm running. I try to spend my social media time when my husband is driving in the car and I'm sitting in the passenger seat. That's when I try to go through all of that stuff. I definitely believe in it. I mean, I don't know if it's really good or bad, but I definitely believe in trying to, like, what 2 or 3 things can you do at the same time, but that you can do well. So if I'm, it's the same thing, equivalent of cooking and washing the dishes and listening to a podcast all at the same. I mean, I've gotten a lot out of that hour. Right. So I look for ways. I'm always constantly looking for ways that I can integrate those things, like I said, that are important to me, that like by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, like my eye, first of all, I'm getting older, y'all, and like my eyes are not what they used to be, especially at night. And I think I need glasses, but I'm fighting it like there's nobody's business. So sometimes like sitting down and reading a book at night is harder. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll just listen to it. But then on like my proposed like day of rest that I have, that's when I will take the time to sit and read. But I'll also buy the hardback book. So even after I listen to it, I'll go back and read through it again and highlight and do things, because I listen to it for the overall, and then I go back for the nitty-gritty type stuff. So yeah.
That's great.
You
I
look
had another.
scared of that answer. It's awesome.
I think it's great. I've been trying to do more of that myself. Like if I'm listening to something, I've been trying to crochet, or if we were watching something on TV, then I'm trying to crochet, or like I'm trying to combine things.
Or listen.
Yeah.
I had to start exercising more because I had gone from extremely, extremely active to like sitting 10 hours a day straight. Like I wouldn't even listen. I wouldn't even go to the kitchen to get food. Like I just wouldn't. It's a problem. I'm doing better. But so one of the things that I had to do was like exercise more. So when some meetings that I have that I know that it's just like a conversation type meeting, and I don't have to take notes, I'll jump on. I got a little elliptical machine from Walmart, not very expensive, and it just sits in my office, and I will, or if there's something that I'm thinking about, or something that I can recite or whatever, but I'll get on the elliptical and I will be doing that while I'm either on the call, not a professional one, right? I'm not gonna but if it's something that I can, hey, if it's like a check-in with somebody, like, hey, do you mind if I just jump on this and get my 15 minutes in? Cool. I'm just always looking for ways.
Well, get one of those under the desk treadmills and let me know how it is.
Yeah, well, but those I think are really expensive. I need a couple of more podcast downloads for that.
Look on Amazon. I found some for like 200. So
bad.
So test them out. Let us know.
But I like working out outside. That is for my last resort. I didn't get a chance to go outside, or it's raining, or because I live in Florida and I'm a wuss and it's like 75 degrees outside and it's cold. I'm working out inside. So, but that is like but honestly, I'm going to tell you the truth. That is my, I have no excuse tool.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. You're creating your way to win, right? Yeah, you are making sure that you're taking all your excuses out.
I don't need to get in my car. It doesn't require gas. I literally have to take 3 steps. It's not affected by the outside weather. Like I have no excuse. So
it's good. So get rid of excuses. If you really are serious, right, then you got to get rid of excuses. It's good. Is there someone that you go to, like who's your go-to on either podcasts or in person or online, or I don't know, just do you have resources or inspirations that help you move forward in professional world? Not that you have name names, but just in general.
Or name names, help us out.
Then you start leaving people out and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot so and so.
I know, right? It's like I cannot say that I have one go-to. I try to consume a little bit of everybody, like a little bit of a lot. So honestly, what really happens is 90% of my social media scrolling is on LinkedIn. And usually if it pops up in my feed, I'd be like, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to that, because now it's a variety of things and I'm getting resources from different places, because what tends to happen is that I will fill my stuff with stuff that I like and stuff that I'm used to. And then I get that perspective all the time. Just kind of like, I'm like my own logarithm from YouTube, right? The more you look at stuff, it feeds that. So, but the more I found myself liking the same type of podcast, getting the same type of information from the same type of resources. So I was like, you know what? I love the community that I have on LinkedIn, and I'm connected with people from all different types of backgrounds, different industries. So if they post something, that's how I find stuff. So one of my favorite books right now is this one right here, Expect to Win. I found out about her because of my LinkedIn feed.
I've got it thanks to your LinkedIn feed.
It is.
I have the little summary and it's been great. I get through the library, I got it online. It's the summary of.
Yeah.
So if you don't have time for the whole entire book, there is a summary of. It's like the Cliff Notes, the old Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Of that book. Yeah.
So
it's good.
So that's, I think, what that would be my, because I really don't have one go-to person. I like to hear from a variety of standpoints and views, and then you just learn, and especially from different industries, because we as volunteer managers, we all know we wear a gazillion hats. So hearing from things from other industries, it's like, oh, wow, I could actually take that and use that over here. So yeah.
Great. Want to ask, oh, shoot, had a question that just went out of my head. It'll come back. But one thing I was wanted to ask, what is something, oh, I know what it is. What is something that you would like to share with the world that maybe you've never said in a podcast, or you have and you want to reiterate it, or something like that? Is there anything that would be, that you hear people ask you questions and you're like, okay, repeat, play repeat, or something like that?
Well, I'm a pretty open book for the most part. So if I haven't said it on a podcast, there's probably a reason why, because of boundaries, right? So I probably will not say it here.
But is there something that you just like to reiterate to those people, to anybody who's listening, of encouragement, or, the mic drops we've had several of tonight?
One of the things that I've just been like really passionate about lately is in the era of everybody like with self-care is absolutely important, right? You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you will topple over. And what good are you if you're sick or not feeling well or unable to function? However, I feel like I feel like me personally, in this day and age, some of the self-care has gone a little bit too far. It's pushed it. And so I'm a big believer in self-care is not selfish. And what I mean by that is, if you are putting somebody out, or something is not getting done that is causing an issue for somebody else because you need to do your self-care, that's selfishness. And that is not okay. Your self-care should be putting you in a position to be able to enhance somebody else's life. And I know that sounds funny and backwards, but think about it. Like, if you're putting your boundary up for self-care, it's because you need to recharge so that you can be better to give or do or be present for somebody. But if you are, listen, I'm just gonna put it out there. If you are going to call in sick for work and you don't cover everything, I have a problem with that. And let me tell you what I mean. If you're sick, don't come into work. Nobody wants you coming into work sick. Nobody wants that. But that doesn't mean, like, unless you were just like dying, right? Hey, I'm not coming in, but I wanted to let you know that this part of the project is something that I'm not going to be able to do, or can somebody get this covered, or this meeting, or hey, I'm canceling everything today because I'm not going to be in and I just don't want to leave you hanging type thing. That's what I need. Like we have a huge presentation today, but because you feel like it's time for you to get a pedicure and it's the only time that you can get an appointment, well, I'm leaving because it's self-care. I need to take care of myself. Like that's self.
No. Yeah.
And I'm very careful. I have to be very careful because it's a very fine line. It's a very, very fine line, because I like, and I think you and I think we've had this conversation. Like, I am a huge believer that you have to take care of yourself. I have boundaries. Because of my faith, I do not work from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday. And everybody who knows me, the answer is no. Sorry. But also everybody who knows me knows that is my boundary. So it's not like, so that's also, I don't feel as bad, because it's like from the time you meet me, that's something that I let people know up front. So if you come and ask me, I'm gonna be no, and then that's on you because you knew my boundary and you were asking. But boundaries that all of a sudden just show up out of nowhere because you didn't want to do it that day. I don't know. It's a slippery slope. I don't know. I feel like you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know if it's being articulated the right way, because I'm not saying to take care of yourself, because you have to. But when the only thing you're taking, and maybe if I put it that way, when the only thing is that you're taking care of is yourself, that's not self-care. That's
Right.
That's selfish.
I think that's a good way to put it. Definitely. It's like one of those things, being totally not taking care of yourself. If you're not getting enough water, you don't go to the bathroom when you should, you don't do, like, you're not eating right, you're not, those things, like, if you're putting those things off for your own health and sanity, then that's not healthy, right? So that's on one end of the pendulum. And then you go to the other pendulum where it's what you talked about, like, it's just all about me and not about anybody else. And you don't know what effect it is. Somewhere in the middle, right?
I believe that you should be self-centered, not selfish. Her faces, Carrie's faces. I'm like, oh my God, what did I want?
I like it.
No, but yeah.
One of our colleagues sent me a stick that, and I framed it and put it in my office on like this kind of like wall of other sayings and photos and things, and of course our CEO walks into my office one day, and that's what he zeroed in on, not the like positive mottos or anything else. It was that one, and I was like, and I made a face. So yeah. It's apt.
I wouldn't play poker well myself, so it's all good.
Yeah.
No.
There are no poker players on this call.
Another reason you're a volunteer manager, because it's just how it is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's great. So Nicole, what is a question that you would like to put out into the volunteer engagement world and have other people answer? Maybe not this podcast, but just in general, is there a question that you'd like to put out into the world to start a discussion? If not, that's fine.
No. I have a question, but I'm like, I don't know if I should ask it.
You can always delete it. It's your podcast.
This whole podcast is going to be like, it's going to be like 3 minutes. Okay. I've often have found in many, many, many different rooms, meetings, like gatherings of volunteer managers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And with volunteers too, in general. I guess it's just people in general. When people, and I don't want to say complain because that's a strong word, but like people will express their frustration with something like this needs to change, this needs to change, this needs to change, or we don't have this tool, we don't have this, da 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 da. Then you do all of this and you give it to them and then they don't use it. That agitates me to no end because you are expressing a need. And I've seen it with volunteer managers. I've seen it with volunteers. We need this, and because da 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 da. I'm like, okay, cool. You sold me. I agree. Let's get it for you. And then you don't use it. But then later on complain about the result of you not using it. Like I
Right. How does any of this make any sense? Not.
like why? Like it's mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling to me. And to hear people express the frustration that they're having with whatever. The tool is literally in your hand. It's almost like you're caught in like, let's say you're caught in a pit and you're like, I can't get out of this pit. And somebody drops you the ladder and you continue to complain about you sitting in the pit. And I'm like,
take step.
Doesn't it go back to what you were saying earlier about giving people solutions or options and them just giving excuses? I mean, and unless they want that solution, really want it, you know.
and I hate to see it, but I mean, I not hate to see it. Well, I hate to see it too, but I hate to say it because I have been in many a volunteer engagement room and I just keep my mouth shut because I'm like, I want to be like, no, you don't really want it. You know how I know? Because we were all in the same room at the same time and got the same tool and you were not using it. You just want to complain. And which is hard because especially in volunteer engagement, we already have so much working against us. We have to fight to advocate for everybody and advocate for this and advocate for that. So it's like, well, why are you making it hard on yourself with this? And I wish I could think of like a specific situation, but it's just like I've seen it so much that it aggravates me. And listen, a lot of times it's going to take a little work. And I'm sorry, it's going to take work. If you want it to change, it's going to take work. So really think about what you're asking that change to be. Because regardless of whatever, if you are asking for change, it's going to have to take work. And then if it comes down to, oh, well, but I don't have time, then just like you said, Carrie, then you don't really want it. And that's one of like the things that I have to work on, like patience wise, because I have very little patience for that. Don't tell me that you want to do something and then we tell you to, oh, but then, and then, well, then don't complain about your volunteers because you don't really want to do it. So, and I keep my mouth shut because I've been in some rooms where I'm like, listen, but I won't say that because it's not my place. And I just exit same way I walked in, quiet.
So my husband just watched a video. He was in a training and this trainer showed this video. Just do 2 and then practice, to practice. It's about how everybody needs to practice. It looks like a drug commercial. And
That
really it's all about
is
to practice,
awesome. I'm Googling it. I'm putting it in the show notes.
Show notes.
to practice. And that goes right along with what you said, right? We all have to practice.
So I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I am really scared about this. Like, this is just stuff that I don't necessarily just say out there because people don't really want to hear it. Like,
I'll say it. I've been that person. Like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And then somebody's like, well, can you do this? Can you do that? And then I find excuses and then I'm guilty. And I'm like, gosh, I've been that person. I know I have. And so looking back though, that's what kept me to where I was. And so it's only when I take responsibility, and Nicole, you've talked about that, taking responsibility for yourself. And that goes back to the boundaries and who you are and what you want and who your values are. And so taking that responsibility to say, you know what, nobody else is going to just do this for me. Why would they? Am I doing that for anybody else? Like, why should they? Am I putting work into it? Am I putting anything into it? And so I think, Nicole, that's some of the things that I know I've learned from you and talked to you, and just kind of reiterating in this podcast, I think is a big piece of it. And I think that's where we have to go, is we have to keep trying, whatever it is, and
100%.
that perseverance. And then if it doesn't work, then try something else.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not a try once and oh look, it didn't work. Like, that's not you gonna be a volunteer manager. You need to grow some thick skin, because that's not what this is about, homie. Like, that's not.
I actually had somebody say something to me, and it was kind of jolting, but it was like, oh, so true. Because I was saying how as volunteer leaders, we're like, oh, so staff come to me and they want the magic tree of volunteers and they just want them like instantly and da 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 da, right? And I literally that day had somebody come to me and say, Angela, do you happen, like almost verbatim, do you happen to have any volunteers around today that could do da da da? And my answer was, well, no, I don't have them in my office just waiting to be dispatched or along those lines. And I said, but we can arrange that, we can talk about it and I could set up something maybe. So anyway, that was my answer. But what came back to me from this other person was, you know what? They were asking for volunteers. And I was like, well, that's great. And then the other thing was, I was like, oh, I have so much to do. And I da 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 da. And the response was from 2 different people, well, why can't you get a volunteer for that? And I was like, so my first initial was, it doesn't work like that, But the response also to that was, but they thought about you getting a volunteer to begin with. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Half of my battle is there. Like, now staff who wouldn't have said that before I was there now said, why don't you get a volunteer for that? That would never have happened, I think, before I had started. So it was, but I needed that jolt of that reminder of somebody to say, but remember, you're halfway,
right.
But but look what just happened. Like, I was looking at like what was the frustrating part, but there was half of the battle has already been there. So, and not a battle, but you know what I mean? Half the kind of a big step had been taken.
When also it just is like, cool, awesome. What an opportunity now to know where you need to work on. Like, yes, now I've got them asking. Now it's time for me to educate.
Right.
Right. So, but it's true. It's
but I
true.
needed somebody to reflect back to me
Yeah.
and say that sort of quote harsh thing. What I kind of took, it wasn't harsh, it was just truth. And thank
Right.
you for the truth, because now I'm like, oh, as long as I'm willing to take that, now I can to practice and I can move ahead and practice thinking, rethinking that. And so I think that that's part of what you're saying too. And all of this is being intentional and thinking and really pulling all of this together is to be that person, figure out who you are, be intentional about who you are, what you believe, what your values are, and to, like you said, I think it's so true, the money and the time is similar, right? So we all get those 24 hours.
Actually,
And
oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
I was going to
go
say,
ahead.
actually, it's not similar because you can always make more
Well,
money. You don't get that time back.
right, true, absolutely. Right, we're spending it and it's limited.
Carrie, you were going to ask something. Do you remember what it is?
Sorry.
Oh, it might have been thinking about all of this and those boundaries. It reminds me of what someone told me once at a former job when I was really having a frustrating time. And she said, no one wakes up thinking, how am I going to make so-and-so's life miserable today? You know, they've got their own struggles, their own issues that they're worrying about. You know, just because they're giving you a harsh feedback that day, it may be because they've gotten something 10 times worse from someone else and they're taking it out on you. So to reframe it, kind of like you were talking about, Angela, of, okay, yes, this is a problem, or I may need to work on this, but why are they saying it now and in that manner? And is this really a reflection of me or them?
Right.
I've had to go back to that a lot.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that a lot. And it all comes back down to, again, who you're talking about, knowing who you are. It was, and just like what you said, Carrie, is like, well, is that a reflection of their character or mine? Like you have to be grounded in who you are. And when I say grounded, I don't mean stubborn and be like, I know I'm all of that and you can't tell me nothing about myself because I know who I am. That's not what I mean.
Right.
But if somebody says something that is 100% against your character, you can know, like, well, that's not true because that's not even how I'm built.
Woo!
Yeah,
Preach
no.
it, girl.
But that's what I mean in terms of knowing who you are, being grounded in that, because people are going to come against you. People are going to attack your character. They're going to attack your values. They're going to attack all of those things. And that's cool. Like, that's life. It's going to happen. And people's values and character are going to clash and conflict because we're human, and that's totally fine. But when you know who you are, like I said, going back to that tree, when you know who you are and you are grounded, there is not much that's going to move you. You will flex and bend according to, hey, if that's something that I need to work on to get myself back, then I will. But don't be so stubborn that if something does come, you break because you weren't willing to bend.
So Nicole,
Wait, what did you say, Carrie?
I'm out of questions.
You're out of questions? Okay. Yeah. Nicole, we want to thank you for letting us take over your podcast, flip it, and ask you all of the questions. We really appreciate this time with you. We love many, many tidbits and diamonds, gems of wisdom that are going to be wonderful for everybody to hear. And we can't wait for people to hear it. And mic drop. There were so many mic drops. We ran out of mics. I don't know what to do.
I love it. I love it. Well, let me tell you, this is weird. Like, yeah, this is weird. But you know, I'm glad that we did it. Speaking of the song, right? Sometimes the fear of flying starts, you know, with taking those chances. And when you asked me, Carrie, what is something that you're like, hey, I don't know what this is going to be, but I'm just going to do it. This would be one. It didn't turn out so bad.
It's great. And here's the beauty, Nicole. You're really in charge of your podcast. You can decide not to air it at all.
I'm telling you, it's going to be the introduction and the closing. This was very like vulnerable, like, ooh, this hurt a little bit. Y'all know I'm an introvert. Y'all know I don't talk to people like that. So this is definitely out of the comfort zone, which is why my face hurts.
Well, you've been awesome. Nicole, you are awesome. And I think you have, as we all do, right? You have a very unique perspective, a unique voice, and a unique view of the world. And I think we all need to hear it, and it is valued.
With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for sticking around and listening to and or watching this episode of From the Suggestion Box, navigating feedback, the good, the bad, and a lot of it tonight was like, say what? I hope you stay tuned for the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.